morning. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Joining me tonight is Michi Iljazi from Taxpayer Protection Alliance. Welcome back.
Hey, happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank you for having me.
It is indeed. It was so good to see you at CPAC.
Yes, we had a good time. Did not get to make it out for karaoke. I'm sorry about that.
You know what? Our friendship was almost over at that point. I was so devastated. Everybody knows I go there just to see you. I only go to CPAC to see you.
I know. There will be more karaoke.
I go to CPAC to see everybody. So
yeah, don't let the word get out, because then everybody's gonna be like, really? What about us? What are we, chopped liver over here?
I said that to everybody, right?
Yeah, but people ruin everything anyway, so what does it matter?
That's true. So lucky enough to get to catch up on your blog today, which I haven't had the chance to do, and everybody should be checking them out. They're at protectingtaxpayers.org. But let's talk about a couple of things that you've been working on. The DC Streetcar project. This is like if I had to, and I say this almost every time you're on, if I had to pick a project that epitomized incredible stupid waste, this would be it.
Yeah, actually, it's actually timely too that we put out the report. Well, we put it out right before the streetcar started service, which is free for the first few weeks. So taxpayers will be subsidizing that as well. But also with the metro shutting down in Washington, D.C. this week for 29 or so hours due to some safety concerns and some equipment upgrades. So it's very timely. We put out a report on the D.C. streetcar a couple weeks ago, right around CPAC, actually. And what we did was we FOIA'd the District Department of Transportation to find out what they were spending some of the money on that they got. The project ran about $200 million, and it's only 2.4 miles, the DC streetcar. It's off of, it's not at Union Station. It's a few blocks away on H Street. And I know I'm getting into DC talk here, but if folks know Union Station, you would think, okay, well, why wouldn't it be at Union Station when people just come on by and they can get on the streetcar? Well, Amtrak didn't want them there. So Amtrak made sure that they didn't get the DC streetcar right there.
Right. Well, for people who don't know, there's obviously a big Amtrak station there. Also taxpayer subsidized. Woohoo.
That's right. So it's $200 million, and that's about $83 million per mile that taxpayers paid for the DC streetcar. And it's running for free for a couple of weeks, and it's closed on Sunday, and it's only a couple miles. It's really a vanity project, and we wanted to see where this money was going. And so we did some FOIA requests, and we focused specifically, because this is always the funnest thing when you're looking at these kinds of projects, the communications and marketing for it. How are they advertising this? What kind of PR are they putting behind it? How much money are they spending really to advertise these things? And we uncovered between, the project has been around, it's been a little over 5 years basically, but the planning for it involved about a little more than a 4-year period between January of 2011 and July of 2015. And we got documents, thousands of pages of FOIA documents that TPA received, and we combed through it. And what we found was a little over $2 million just in marketing and PR alone for it. Before it even started, before it even goes up, before it even is running, basically.
They spent $174,000 on a website. I have to assume that they gave the contract to the same people who did healthcare.gov. I mean,
you would think that they would think, right? And it's about 30,000 at most when we talk to experts. And the website, I mean, people can go dcstreetcar.com. It's a basic website. We're not dealing with what's Skynet here.
So you guys have put in all of this work, putting in this really beautiful report, by the way. Well done.
And the FOIAs are there. Like, we put up the documents.
Links to all the docs and all. So,
and it's redacted, too. Some of it's redacted as well.
It's redacted for streetcar.
It's a transportation project, and they're redacting the communications on it.
So, I mean, at this point, supposedly service is supposed to begin when? Like actually begin?
So the service started January or February 27th. It was limited service. So they're doing like a trial period where they're trying to get some buzz about it and get people to go on. So for the first few weeks, they're not charging anybody anything. They're kind of just letting them board. And I have to assume, I haven't looked at it yet, but because of the metro shutting down yesterday, I'm curious if they charged or if there was an uptake in usage and whatnot. I haven't gone on. I really want to go on it and like get a picture on it and post it on TPA social media, but I don't make it to that part of town much. So that's why, but it's instructive to know that the 200 million that they got, it was from the District Department of Transportation, and the City Council had approved it. And the problem is that, we've talked about things like municipal broadband, NFL stadium subsidies. This is another one of those things. It's a vanity project. It's not something that anybody wanted. It's not something that's needed or necessary, but it costs taxpayers a ton of money. And the benefit that you're supposed to get from it, you really don't get. You end up subsidizing subsidizing the service, or subsidizing, what is being put in as, this is going to generate revenue, it's going to create jobs, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is just another example of that. This is an expensive example of that, though. $200 million
that's a lot of money.
Really a lot of money.
For 2.4 miles.
Yeah. It's just 2.4 miles. And when you think of where that money could go, though, but that's what's even bigger. And I hate to say it, but it's just to call out folks who need to be called out. This week in D.C., not only did you have the streetcar just up and running, you had the metro shut down for one entire day during the weekday when people are working. People are here. The city does have economic activity. And yet there was also a conference this week in D.C., and it was the National Association of Public Transportation. They had their big confab here. I don't know if
should have protested.
It's like the Public Transit Association. And they had their happy hour. So the optics are just a disaster. And when you think about just a sliver of that $200 million, if it's going to be granted, the metro service is utilized way more than the DC streetcar. It actually is something that is needed for people to get around in this city. So and it needs to be improved. There are dozens and dozens of problems at every station. And, if you're going to spend taxpayer money on public transportation, don't create new vanity projects on streetcars that nobody's going to use. If you're going to do it, then you need to put it into a system that is already being used. Obviously, I'm for privatizing the metro. I don't even think it should be run by the government, but that's a whole nother story.
Right. Well, that's the story. So even worse, though, you talk about this being a vanity project, and it's a cute little thing for tourists and yada, yada, yada. But the fact that it doesn't run on Sunday blows my mind because, look, I've been to D.C. and I've been there a lot, and I take a day every single time I go just to go in and tour the mall and do the monuments, because no matter how many times I go there, it's the only redeeming quality about being there is that I get to go do all the tourist stuff. And I do that on the weekends. So as a tourist, I would think, I'm going to make this brand new, awesome little cute thing downtown, a stop, and get there to find out it doesn't run on Sundays.
And then it doesn't run. For sure. Exactly.
I would be furious.
Yeah, go ahead.
These are the things we should be protesting. Really, you want to argue about wasting your money and all of this stuff. And you and I have gone through over the last couple of years a whole lot of really wasteful projects.
Plenty to go around.
But this is absurd, and the fact, unfortunately, that I know you guys have been talking about this for a while, but have to wait this 5 years to FOIA all of the, find out what this thing is going to cost, to inform people it's not even this is projected and you can stop it. It's hope you enjoyed bending over again because this is what it costs you.
Yes, but I will say this, that part of the aim of also doing the report is twofold in that, we want to expose what's going on here and telling everybody, hey, this is what you paid for, but also, not to use your phrase, but to also really put public officials on notice, particularly here in D.C., because I know this will shock you, just like it shocked, Louis in Casablanca. There's gambling going on in the casino, but there are already in discussions in the city council to make more of these tracks around the city and spend more money. They're already talking about it. So this is but what I'm saying is this is kind of a way to say, hey, if you're thinking about doing that, just know we're going to FOIA you again. We're going to embarrass you again, and we're going to show how you waste taxpayer money, not just here in D.C., but in places across the country where you see infrastructure is crumbling, and instead of putting the taxpayer dollars that are taken in federal gas tax, in other ways, in the tolls, instead of building stupid vanity projects to actually put into infrastructure that is needed, that actually people do use for commerce every day.
Right. This terrifies me in that it's going to be one of those things like, oh, look at this cute little thing they did in D.C. Let's do it in San Antonio, or let's do it in Louisville, Kentucky. Like, most of my listeners probably are very unfamiliar with the city of Louisville, Kentucky. But over the last 20 years, Louisville has undergone this very intense self-analysis, and they've done things that, for the most part, I think have been wise for the city, and very quietly. Like, they get the city involved, but, Louisville's a family town. It really is. But unfortunately, I've noticed lately, like, they are looking at a municipal broadband expansion project right now, and I can just see them being like, we can leap into the 21st century or 22nd century by putting in a streetcar. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're using 1800 to 17th century technology.
Right.
to expand
tourism. So I think right after you and I get off here, I'm going to draft a strongly worded warning to the city of Louisville. As somebody who loves that city dearly, really considers that my real hometown, I think it's time for me to be like, don't do this. I'm just going to include
Don't do this.
It's 7 pages. The whole headline is just going to read, don't do this. I will FOIA you, give them fair warning that this should just not happen.
Yeah, and that's, that's what we like to hear. But the problem is whether it's Louisville or whether it's, wherever, we're going to see more of these examples pop up. And the thing is, for us, obviously, being located in D.C., and we had some particular interest from some of our local media that we deal with on the subject. And we were telling them for a while, we're like, we're waiting on the FOIAs. We told them about the story, and, it got very well received when we talked about it. And there is some outrage, and there should be some outrage. And obviously when tourists come here, they see it and it seems, oh, that's great. That's nice. But it's really not all that it's cracked up to be, particularly when I guarantee you, nobody riding that streetcar would probably know that it cost $200 million for this. And they would
they're going to be like, wow, what a short ride.
Yeah, exactly.
They should have little plaques. This is costing you, it's costing you this to
Mile
ride.
1, 83 million.
Right?
Yeah.
Should flash up on the little sign every stop, You just
but then it'll cost more money to do that, Michelle.
Yeah, $83 million for a little sign. All right. Well, we're going to take a short break. You guys can follow Michi on Twitter at Michi83, MICHI83, and you can follow Taxpayer Protection Alliance at, I'm sorry, at Protecting Taxpayers with one T.
Protect Taxpayers.
Protect Taxpayers with one T. We'll be right back. Welcome back to In Deep on FTR Radio. I'm joined tonight by Michi Iljazi from Protecting Taxpayers, and they have they have a great blog on their website, and you can keep up with everything they're doing there. And I want to go through a couple of those. I know we want to talk about what's going on with the budget. But you know that I spent 9 months fighting the Farm Bill last time it was up. Like, I actually read the Farm Bill. You and I, right? We're the only people who read the Farm Bill.
The only two of the only 7 people in the world, right?
And the Farm Bill is one of those things that flies under America's radar. Because
it was National Agriculture Day this week, too. I think it was yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, yesterday, I think. And so America doesn't pay attention to the Farm Bill. And it's a nostalgia thing and a guilt thing, right? Because God bless America's farmers and Paul Harvey, and you can hear the music in the background, and, you know, John, nothing runs like a deer, blah, blah, blah. But it's also a guilt thing because included in the Farm Bill is the golden calf of welfare, food stamps. And so it's one of those super touchy subjects that most of America either ignores because it doesn't apply to them, or they think it doesn't apply to them, or it's one of the things that people on both the left and the right don't want to fight because the narrative is always, of course, why do you hate poor people? Yeah. If you want to cut it at all. But there is a provision.
Why do you hate poor people, Michelle?
Oh, I hate poor people. Small children, old people, poor people. Look, I just hate people. This is not news. But tucked into the latest iteration of the Farm Bill was a new project that was touted by legislators as a money-saving change to the way we help subsidize farmers' income and or make farming more appealing, right? Because farming is not so appealing if you're a small farmer anymore. You can't compete with big business. You deal with the EPA. It's expensive to go to market because there's like this huge pathway of red tape in your way. Like, there's not a yellow brick road. It's just all red tape in your way if you want to take your farm to table and sell your vegetables or whatever. If you're a rancher, it's even worse because you have to deal with the FDA and the USDA. Farming is not an appealing option for people these days as a career. So the lawmakers of the United States of America, in their infinite wisdom, introduced the crop insurance program.
Yeah.
Which was, of course, what I screamed about the most, because like everything else, the crop insurance program is based on fantasy. The idea being that they are going to, in the event of severe weather or natural disaster, subsidize incomes of farmers so that they can be sustainable, right? The whole guise that we want to keep farmers farming, and if they can't make a living, they're not going to farm. The CBO scored the crop insurance program at a number that was unexpected by both Democrats and Republicans who proposed and endorsed the program. The CBO didn't even get close to what the crop insurance program cost us last year. Way, way over projections, if you can imagine. So you guys have put out a blog post talking about reforming the crop insurance program. I hate the word. Like, it should be one of those, like, we tried this, it failed.
Yeah, no, for sure. I understand what you're saying. Reform, yeah, I know.
This is a failure of a program. This is a massive failure of a program. Like, it did not, in no way did it meet expectations as it was sold. Kind of like Social Security.
Yep. Wow, that's a whole other subject altogether. Because
yeah, but you know what?
I don't think Social Security was designed for the reasons they say it was designed.
Oh no, sold as a lot. Yeah, but crop insurance is. I mean, it's a reasonable comparison, because this is what happens. It's not poor farmers getting crop insurance. It's not the guy up the street who has the tomato stand out there who's getting crop insurance. It's agribusiness. And it is never, ever, ever going to pay off.
I think another good comparison too, to make it contemporary and for people to, because and I'll get to the crop insurance, but just to bring it around to say, these are areas that TPA and you have been working on, and other groups that TPA is involved in have been working on. When we talk about these programs that are designed to solve problems that people think exist, and what they end up doing is they favor certain people, and you're subsidizing. You're just subsidizing a lifestyle. You're subsidizing a profession, or you're subsidizing someone's livelihood, when that's not the intention of the program. The intention of the program is to guard against, these catastrophic events that may happen, that, people who invest their efforts and are doing good work for, the country and the global community providing a service, they need to be protected. But that's not what the program does. Flood insurance is another example. And that is a complete opposite in terms of where it's impacting and who it's impacting. I mean, there's a little bit in the Midwest in that area, but it's mainly for your coasts. And I'm from Florida. And that's another issue that TPA is taking on, because with flood insurance, again, you're just subsidizing someone's lifestyle and risks that are known, and the government doesn't need to be in that business. So with the crop insurance, obviously, like you said, it's a program that groups who care about fiscal accountability, excuse me, want to see go away. Outrageous that it was used to be put into the Farm Bill, but we did put on our blog post a recent coalition letter that was an effort, because when President Obama released his recent budget, while there was a ton of things wrong with it, and it's mainly a political document, there was a couple of things that deserved some praise, and his proposals on reducing the spending in the crop insurance program was one of them. And he takes on two very specific components of the program: harvest price options and prevented planting policies. Now, not to get in the weeds, but just to say what they are. Essentially, the harvest price option is basically like Cadillac insurance for crop insurance. I mean, it is really very expensive for the taxpayers, and it covers farm losses at higher than any price that's locked when you have that policy selected, when they're picking for their crop insurance.
Right.
And like you said, these are programs that in the end they don't solve any problems. You're subsidizing lifestyles, and you're creating problems that don't exist. And these savings, I mean, $18 billion over 10 years, it's not something to sneeze at, particularly when, you have Congress right now, which we'll get to in a little bit, arguing over $30 billion in spending. So
right.
$18 billion is a lot it
is a lot of money.
It up best. Yeah.
I mean, it is a lot of money. It is a lot of money. Not so much. I mean, well, it is a lot of money. Period. The end.
It just is. Yeah, we've become desensitized. I think it's it's just another.
It's only
but it's
$5 billion here, $5 billion there. But it is a lot of money. The fact remains, this in addition to every other ridiculous program that's put out there, this is what's making us going to hit $20 trillion in debt.
Mm-hmm.
But this. In particular, this is hard for me. Me taking this on was a personal choice because I'm a foodie, right? And anybody who knows me knows, like I am, I don't like fast food. Sorry, I don't. I avoid it at all costs.
I love it.
Yeah, well, it takes all kinds, right? God bless the free market. But right. I mean, I travel to eat. I will literally get on a plane and be like, oh, restaurant week in Chicago, I'm so there. And living in places like Boulder, and my family is in Kentucky and they farm. And I've been to Joel Salatin's farm, and that was practically a spiritual moment, I'm one of those people who loves every aspect of food, and those small farmers who literally get their hands dirty every day and have apprentices out there and are struggling, literally scraping to make ends meet while they fight bureaucracy just to scrape in the few dollars that they get. Those people are very near and dear to my heart because I love food so much, and I love the whole process of getting it, from the ground to my table. But for me, taking on the farm bill was one of those things like, this is one, it's not a farm bill anymore. It's now a welfare bill. And adding crop insurance just made it more of a welfare bill, but a corporate welfare bill, because these people that I care so very much about, who make their livelihood, people like Martha Bonetta at Liberty Farms and, Joel Salatin, who put their heart and soul into producing this amazing food, are fighting bureaucracy just to be able to do this job. And the lobbyists for big agribusiness are buying legislation like this so that they can guarantee their bottom line. And I'm not obviously I'm a capitalist, so I love that. But the moment you start using your lobbyists to ensure a program like crop insurance and all of the little pieces that go along with it, you're now a cronyist invasion of my paycheck. And so for me, taking this on was very, very personal, because it doesn't benefit the people who I think that it was sold to benefit in any way, shape, or form. And it lends to the idea, especially when people on the right and Republicans and libertarian-ish people support something like this, that all we care about is big business and cronyism. And as you and I both know, big business is not free enterprise. They're not the same thing. So, again, this flies under the radar of most people on the left and right. People are not willing to attack it because of the welfare clauses that are in it. And when Congress, egregiously sells something like crop insurance, that it's going to protect that guy you get, that vision of that guy, farmer you get in your head when you hear Paul Harvey, is exceedingly disingenuous, and it angers me to no end, like in ways that other spending doesn't. And you're right, $18 billion is, people can't fathom that amount of money. If $18 billion was legitimately going to the small farmers of this country, they would live happily ever after, but that is not how this thing works. And so me particularly appreciate you guys putting some effort into keeping track of what's going on with this. This is one of those things that just lights my fire and makes me want to pick up pitchforks.
Yeah, and I just want to say a special thank you to the R Street Institute, because they've been a really big leader on this and the flood insurance in particular.
Right.
Those two issues. So we were happy to join with them on this letter, and other groups as well who have been fighting on this. Taxpayers for Common Sense, National Taxpayers Union. Those groups have also done very good work on this. And there's also an environmental component that you talk about here that folks who are not necessarily on the right can really get behind, because when you have some of these very high-priced and high coverage insurance plans for crop insurance, it actually does, in many cases, it actually leads to overplanting by some of the farmers, because they know that their risks are covered. So then that puts the land at risk when you do that. That's something that's a problem for folks who care about the environment. I mean, you're literally have taxpayer dollars backing up your risk, and then you think, well, I can just plant as much as I want, because if it goes bad, I'm covered anyway. That not only harms your product, it also harms the environment as well, and that's a problem.
It is a problem, and it's one of those things that, I like to say that this is the most boring show on FTR radio, but at least we talk about the things that give nuance to our smaller government, limited government, because big government has bad impact. And that's one of the things. I mean, overplanting, I know like all of my friends on the right are rolling their eyes. I am an environmentalist, not in the please let the EPA save us kind of way, but I've seen what happens to land. Why do I love why do you hate poor people and love the EPA? It makes no sense. I've seen what happens when you don't practice good stewardship, and that's everything from, bad crop yields for farmers who don't know what they're doing, and end up hurting the community in the meantime, and runoff and massive water disasters. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. To things like egregious costs that comes with guarantees by the federal government that no matter what you do to the land, you're going to be met with enough to sustain yourself. And we'll circle back around to that, because I've got one more thing that I want to talk about, you guys, and we've talked about this before, the death tax. I absolutely, I abhor our tax code from top to bottom. Everyone on the planet knows that all I ask for every Valentine's Day is repeal of the 16th Amendment. But if I were to pick an egregious portion of the tax code that I hate the most, it would be the death tax. And once again, you guys are partnering with another relatively big coalition to try to get the right to move their ass on the death tax. And the House has already done this, right? I mean, the House has already passed a resolution.
So the House passed actually last year. Passed now House Ways and Means Chairman Kevin Brady's bill to repeal the death tax, the Repeal the Death Tax Act of 2015. And it's very simple. Repeal the death tax. I mean, that's it. The death tax was, first, at least an iteration of it goes back to the 1700s with the Stamp Act. And then you have another iteration during the Civil War. It was used as an inheritance tax, really, to pay for the war. And then that came up again during World War I, but with the combination of the 16th Amendment passing, plus the financing and paying off for World War I, it put the death tax into, or the now as known as the estate tax, into the code. Well, we're coming up on the 100-year anniversary of World War I, coming up in 2017. And, the goal for many advocates, whether you're talking about Jim Martin over at 60 Plus Association, or whether you're talking about folks at the, Family Business Defense or Family Business Council who, led this effort, or folks at Americans for Tax Reform or NTU or Taxpayers Protection Alliance, or groups like the Black Chamber of Commerce. I mean, there are many groups. It's a very broad coalition. I think 111 groups on the letter that we posted today that want a repeal of the death tax. We already have it in the House, and it was bipartisan in the House, by the way, bipartisan vote. And now the Senate, there's a similar bill. Senator John Thune of South Dakota has that out there, and we're looking for them to just introduce it. Let's get a vote on the floor. Let's see some of these senators get on the record about this. And the Family Business Coalition has done great work on this. They've been a real leader on the death tax, and they have a pledge for candidates for federal office about the death tax. And will you repeal the pledge? Presidential candidates as well. Will you pledge to repeal it? And I think you're right about there are so many things when we look at the tax code today that we can look at and say, this is a problem, this needs to be fixed. But the death tax is really egregious, number one, because it was never intended to be a permanent fixture of it. And number two, you're talking about a very small amount of revenue that it gets, but it impacts so many people every day. And you're talking about people from all walks of life. And it has a very negative impact when you're talking about generations and really the idea of generational theft. That's the best way I put it. When you talk about folks who make a good life, save money, start a business, build up savings, have some wealth, and they want to leave it to their children, the government comes in and says, no, we're going to confiscate a lot of that. And it really is harmful to folks who may have not come from a wealthy family, and they see their parents become successful, and they want to share some of that success, and it really takes away that opportunity, and it's very unfortunate.
Well, not only that, but I mean, well, like you said, like people who are me, for example, the death tax is not really likely to impact me unless, of course, I mean, it really isn't. The average American doesn't feel like they need to be concerned about the death tax because it doesn't impact them. But the fact of the matter is, every time a new budget comes up, these things creep in, like discussion of these things creep in. And when they start lowering things like the poverty line, and they start lowering that line of what describes a wealthy American, my poor kids may find out that having, $250,000 worth of assets now makes them, liable for the death tax for their kids. And like you said, this is one of those things that doesn't need to exist anymore. Relatively speaking, the amount of money that the federal government gains from this is a pittance. It just optically looks horrible to support it.
We've paid for World War I, right? We've already paid.
Right. Like the purpose of this tax no longer exists unless, and there's no existing purpose for this thing to go on. And so for me, it's one of those things that, like XM Bank is really a no-brainer. There's no logical reason for this to exist anymore. And yet, unfortunately, because most Americans feel like they're not impacted by it, they scroll by that, that little part of the tax code. It never hits them when they're filing their taxes online. They never have to write that check. It doesn't occur to them to fight against it. And so, again, appreciate you guys sticking with this for so long. I would love, just make sure you keep me posted on what goes on there. I already know what's going to go on.
Yeah.
Let's pretend I don't.
Well, we have a Senate, and this is an easy vote, but you wonder, and I'm just thinking out loud, if sometimes there's some bargaining going on, and maybe that's why you don't see a vote on this, that, they're holding this off for another day when maybe real tax reform discussions can come along, and this could be a chip that you use. I don't know. But you're right. Seems like a no-brainer. Is it something that President Obama would even sign? Probably not. So why not have the senators who are in now on the record? Let's have it, because we have not had a death tax vote in the Senate. Now, when we had it in the House, it was the first vote we had in the House in a very long time, many years. I think it was 10 years since we had a death tax vote in the House, or close to that. And so in the Senate, you have a lot of these senators who were not around for that last vote on the death tax. So I think it's important to get them on the record, both Republicans and Democrats, and let their constituents know where they stand on these issues.